At its height, the Achaemenid Empire held dominion over 44% of the world's population. Their lands covered about 2.1 million square miles, including much of the Middle East and stretching into Egypt and Asia. During its golden age, it went as far as India in the east, Macedonia in the west, and as far south as the Sahara Desert. To this day, they hold the record for control over the largest percentage of the world's population. Some historians consider the Achaemenid Empire to be the first superpower. It heavily influenced the Greeks, who in turn dramatically impacted modern society. The Achaemenid Empire's story is full of power, triumph, and greed, and the destruction of this Persian empire serves as a warning to us today. Although the Greeks are more well known and the Romans are more commonly discussed, it's time to dive further into history and examine the first imperial superpower, the Achaemenid Empire. By examining how it rose to prominence, fell, and was almost forgotten in the dusty pages of history, we can glean an understanding of how power affects people and glimpse some similarities with the modern world. How did the Achaemenid Empire become powerful? Historians are unsure of the exact year when the Achaemenid Empire began, but they know Cyrus the Great was the first leader. We do not know much about Cyrus the Great. We don't even know the year he was born. Some historians think he was born in 600 BCE or 599 BCE, but others believe he was born later, around 576 or 575 BCE. According to Cyrus, he came from the ruling class, with his father and ancestors ruling before him. But other sources have different stories. One even says he was born into a low-income family who served in the Median court. Cyrus the Great eventually led a successful rebellion against the Medes in 553 BCE, and sometime between 550 BCE and 539 BCE, he founded a new power, the Achaemenid Empire. Cyrus the Great united the various nomadic tribes living in the area. By combining the northern Iranian tribes, he created the Persian culture and soon began to push out of northern Iran. Cyrus the Great had tremendous drive. Once he took the throne, he called himself the King of Persia and reigned between 29 and 31 years. By 540 BCE, he was already expanding his lands by capturing surrounding territories, even though he had only rebelled against the Medes 13 years ago. Once he conquered Babylon, he began calling himself the King of Babylon, King of Sumer and Akkad, and King of the Four Corners of the World. Although Cyrus proclaimed himself the savior of every nation and tribe he added to his empire, he was an adept ruler. He not only allowed religious freedom, but he also did his best to ensure it. Under his rule, religious freedom was highly encouraged, so cities and nations rebuilt their temples. He also invested in infrastructure in newly conquered cities, ensuring they were fit to become a thriving part of his empire. Some historians believe this tolerance was a crucial part of the longevity of the Achaemenid Empire. Cyrus the Great was critical to how the Achaemenid Empire became so influential. He was an astute politician and a brilliant general. His influence stretched far beyond the confines of his lands and still impacts us today. But the Achaemenid Empire did not peak under his rule. Instead, Darius the Great saw the Achaemenid Empire through its golden era, and he is regarded as one of the great Persian kings, just like Cyrus the Great. Despite his historical impact, Darius was actually not related by blood to Cyrus. He was born in 550 BCE to Hystaspes, a leader in Persia, and soon became a spearman under Cambyses II, Cyrus's son and heir. In 522 BCE, a revolt broke out amongst the people under the leadership of Gormata. According to Darius, Gormata had secretly murdered Cambyses II's brother and was posing as that brother in an attempt to usurp the throne. Darius worked with the upper-class nobles to end the revolt, and they then decided Darius should be the next ruler of the Achaemenid Empire. Darius the Great centered his empire around the new capital city Persepolis. The city's name actually has Greek origins, translating as the City of the Persians. He was renowned as a leader and politician, restructuring the government in a way that still shapes how we think of governments today. He finished dividing the empire into districts called satrapies, set up a tax collection system, and further developed the impressive postal system started by Cyrus. Darius also oversaw massive construction projects and updates to the military, all of which kept the Achaemenid Empire as one of the most powerful empires at the time. Darius proved his prowess on the battlefield multiple times throughout his reign. He started by quelling rebellions across the empire, and later moved on to campaigns against the Greeks. The ancient Greeks were slowly spreading across the Mediterranean, and they had established several city-states near the coast of modern-day Turkey. Their location placed them at risk of Persian attack, and the Persians and Greeks battled each other throughout their history, leading to the start of the Persian Wars around 499 BCE. The animosity between the two civilizations continued after Darius's death. His son Xerxes took up the cause during his reign, leading to the continuation of the Persian Wars in 480 BCE. Their combined work shows how powerful the Achaemenid Empire had become. They were strong enough to build an empire that could pick fights with the ancient Greeks, and their influence still reaches us today. Sadly, empires do not last forever. Fighting the Greeks wore the Achaemenid Empire down quickly, but it would still be years before its destruction finally arrived. What led to the destruction of the Achaemenid Empire? All empires need strong central leaders in order to stay together and flourish. Without such a leader, the provincial satraps began taking on more power. They made their own policies and even waged war against each other to grab more power. The Achaemenid Empire soon became decentralized. Simultaneously, the central government began taxing the people heavily and holding on to its wealth. The leaders were no longer connected to the common people, causing revolts throughout the empire that only led to more taxes. Eventually, Prince Cyrus the Younger rebelled against his brother, Artaxerxes II. Although Artaxerxes defeated Cyrus, Cyrus's Greek mercenaries were stranded in the middle of the Persian Empire. These 10,000 soldiers had to fight their way out. Historians call this the March of the 10,000, and it showed how disconnected and weak the Achaemenid Empire had become. The Achaemenid Empire officially ended when Alexander the Great invaded. He was one of the most famous Macedonian kings and lived from July 21, 356 BCE to June 10 or 11, 323 BCE. At only 23 years old, he became king of Macedonia in 336 BCE and continued his father's campaigns by marching the Macedonian army east. He had already proven his military skill at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BCE, so when he assumed the throne 2 years later, no one questioned Alexander's intentions to continue the Macedonian conquest. His father, King Philip II, had already conquered the Greek peninsula, so Alexander continued the conquest by conquering Greece's neighbors. Alexander the Great arrived in Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, in 334 BCE and began liberating cities from the Achaemenid Empire. The Persian satraps attempted to resist him, but could not present a unified front by this point. The Achaemenid Empire was no longer a cohesive entity, so Alexander the Great could pick off the satraps one by one. He conquered Sardis and Ephesus, among others, before facing King Darius III's army. The Achaemenid Empire was fragmented, but the central government still had some power. However, the Persians could no longer stand against the Greeks, and the Battle of Issos was a Macedonian victory. Of course, the Achaemenid Empire did not fall only due to its lack of unity. Alexander the Great was also renowned for his ruthlessness, making him a formidable enemy. For example, he was so determined to conquer Tyre, an island city, that he built a causeway out to it for his siege equipment. This causeway still connects Tyre to Lebanon's mainland today. After he took the city, Alexander killed many of its citizens and sold the rest into slavery. King Darius III and Alexander the Great met again in battle in 331 BCE at the Battle of Arbela, also known as the Battle of Gaugamela. Once again, Alexander soundly defeated the Persians and forced Darius III to flee the battlefield. He continued his push to Persepolis, which he conquered and burned in the winter of 330 BCE. At this point, the remaining Persian leaders were desperate. Clearly, nothing would stop Alexander the Great, so one of Darius III's generals, Besus, assassinated Darius in the summer of 330 BCE. It's possible Besus thought Alexander would reward him for showing loyalty to Alexander's cause, but the Macedonian king did not see it that way. Instead, he eventually captured and executed Besus for betraying his king, to remind the Macedonian troops that disloyalty does not pay in the end. However, with Darius's death, Alexander could now call himself the king of Asia. The Achaemenid Empire was officially no more. The Macedonian army continued to march east, conquering land in modern-day Afghanistan and pushing all the way to India. In India, his troops finally forced Alexander to turn back toward home, although Alexander never made it back to Macedonia. He returned to Babylon, where he discovered many satraps were abusing their power and re-established his control before dying on June 10th or 11th, 323 BCE. He left no clear successor, and his generals soon split up Alexander's empire amongst themselves. There was no chance for the Achaemenid Empire to recover. With no Persian king left, it appeared the Persian Empire had finally reached its end. Of course, the end of the Achaemenid Empire did not lead to the end of Persian culture. The Persians later regrouped and established other empires, like the Sassanid Empire, which gave the Romans grief for many years. The traditions and customs that made Persian culture unique continue to live on in modern Iran. Their influence continues to impact the world today, and their destruction shows how power can corrupt anyone. Although the Achaemenid Empire was only a shell of its former self by the time Alexander the Great arrived, we can still appreciate the beauty of this unique empire and possibly catch a glimpse of how an empire from 2,500 years ago shares remarkable similarities with our culture today. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the Achaemenid Empire, check out our book, Achaemenid Empire, a captivating guide to the First Persian Empire founded by Cyrus the Great, and how this empire of ancient Persia fought against the ancient Greeks in the Greco-Persian Wars. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.